year 1846, a launch rode into this bay on the Lizard and a foreign visitor, a German, stepped ashore. And as he walked up the beach, he at first no doubt marvelled at the exquisite grandeur of this majestic landscape. Then, as the visitor neared the base of the cliffs, his eyes were taken by another remarkable feature of this cove, the rocks. Their colours range from shades of emerald green through vibrant blue and yellow to deepest crimson and jet black. Where passing footfall has polished their surface, they shine like jewels. The cliffs here at Kynance Cove on the Lizard Peninsula in Cornwall are composed of a rock known as Serpentine, and that visitor, who'd been sailing the coast with his wife, determined to find out more about this magical stone. His name was Albert, Prince Albert, and when his wife, Queen Victoria, commissioned fireplaces carved from serpentine by local artisans for Osborne House, their home on the Isle of Wight, the local stone at once became fashionable and famous. So what exactly is serpentine? It's essentially a marble. A metamorphic rock created as the continents were formed some 300 million years ago. Beneath the world's oceans, under great heat and pressure, the molten magma, a mix of oceanic crust and superheated wet, ultramafic rocks, drew the surrounding minerals into the dense serpentine mass as it slowly solidified. Serpentine is not a rare mineral. It can be found on virtually every continent, but nowhere else on Earth apart from the Lizard does it display such a vivacious mixture of colours. The rock has been both worked and used as a building material for centuries. Locally, the stone is used everywhere, in the hedges, in the houses, and especially in the churches. The church towers at both St Wynwallow and Grade Church incorporate undressed serpentine blocks and granite. They date from the 13th century and show how well this versatile rock weathers the salt-laden winds. Inside both churches, serpentine is an integral part of the devotional furnishings. The ornate lecterns and pulpits softly reflecting the multicoloured hues of the stained glass windows. Their finely chiselled chasing heightened with the use of polished jewel-like red and green serpentine. The rock has a long and ancient tradition as a useful and sacred stone in civilizations around the world. It was used to make seals by the Assyrians, the Persians and the Egyptians because neither sealing wax or wet clay adhered to it, and was carried as an amulet as it was widely believed to offer protection from snake bites. Amongst the indigenous people of South America, red serpentine was revered and used for sacrificial altar stones in bloodletting ceremonies, while in New Zealand, the Maori fashioned green serpentine into tools, jewellery and ceremonial axes. In mid-19th century Cornwall, following Victoria and Albert's patronage and a display of large serpentine pieces at the Crystal Palace exhibition in 1851, orders began to pour in and the serpentine business went into overdrive. The new fashion of taking holidays by the sea, the nascent tourist industry, saw workshops and studios springing up all around Lizard Village, employing hundreds of local men, women and children. But by the end of the century, the boom days were over. The stone was no longer fashionable, and one by one the factories and workshops closed. One of the largest, the Lizard Serpentine Company here at Poltesco Cove, at its height employed almost 70 people, but by 1893 the machinery was silent, the building echoing only to the sound of the wind and the waves. The Cornish are well used to fluctuations of fortunes, and those stoneworkers who didn't leave the duchy to seek employment elsewhere went back to working the mines, fishing or tending the fields. A few carried on with their craft, creating pieces to appeal to the holidaymakers whose numbers were increasing year on year. Today, John Hendy is one of only a handful of remaining serpentine turners.
These boxes, as we call them, these are what they've been making these for years. They haven't altered. As you can see, there's a bit more shape in that one. That now that they've been making these for years, they haven't altered at all. Same with the bigger lighthouses. You know, they got lights in them today. Years ago, they never had a way of putting lights in them, but
yeah.
They've been doing that now ever since electric, I suppose. What they look like before you start, they've been worked on a bit now with a chipping hammer to knock them roughly to round, so you've got no square lumps flying around.
Yeah.
And the bottoms are levelled off, ready for the faceplate to be stuck onto. Like I said, I've been in since '63, and I've never known a bad summer. I've known some better than others, obviously, and some a bit not so good, but they've always been to carry you through. Yeah, I say there's 5 of us left now, and the youngest one must be mid-50s, I would think. I don't really know on that score, but it must be mid-50s now, or coming on that way. Well, say 50 then. So after that, when we 5 pack up, that's it, gone. And there's no point anybody else coming into it, because we've got problems of our own. We have them for a number of years, finding the stone. Well, I suppose now for the last 30 years, we wouldn't have had stone. We'd have run down a long time ago. We wouldn't have had stone because a lot of the stone I'm working now, and same with the other turners, it's come from old quarries that the old men got drove out of. When I say they got drove out of, either it was too deep for them to get out, and certainly it doesn't go all that deep anyhow, but they got drove out with water. In those days, if they went to quarry at a pit or went back next day, it was full up with water. They spent half a day now with a bucket bailing it out. So in the end, they gave up on it, of course. Today we got mechanical diggers and we got pumps to pump the water out, so it's no problem. But we've gone through a lot of the old men's pits to get stone out that they couldn't get out for one reason or another, mainly water. So we've got to be thankful that they left some behind for us.
Sure.
Because if I was in it for another 15 years or so, I don't know where the stone would come from.
Right.
I honestly don't.
So when John Hendy retires, his business will close, and there doesn't seem to be any interest from the next generation in keeping the tradition alive. Or is there? I met with Don Taylor, who's taking serpentine carving in a new direction.
My work is more abstract, contemporary. It's more working with the stone, the shape of the stone, and just really just taking an edge off it, or shaping it into, hand shaping it rather than turning it. This is what the difference is, I suppose. If you're using the best quality serpentine, and there's very few faults, you can get the fine edges, and it's really knowing how far you can take that piece of stone.
Don and a growing number of serpentine carvers are finding new ways of interpreting the beauty of this versatile stone. Whether or not there's enough serpentine to fulfil the needs of the next generation of carvers, only time will tell.